microphones or whatever they are called, vuvuzela, to tell people that mask up, they would also have used that chance to tell people and inform them about this silent pandemic, which is gender-based violence. And then also open their doors and inform people that in case anything happens, we are open, you can come and report. Because the other thing that really affects people is in regards to the norms, where someone can't speak up. Saying that you're a survivor of gender-based violence is seen like a taboo. How do you say that? You're putting the dirty laundry out there. But then if we sat down as the community leaders, and they did that, but then we start from family. So as I'm a mother of a 14-year-old son. I always sit him down and we have the conversations in regard to sex education. I tell him, if they touch you like this, if they do this to you, if they make these comments, this is what happens. Please report. So encourage people starting from home to speak up. To speak up when they get issues to do with gender-based violence. But also make sure that other forums, because if you can't access the police because it's far, then let the LC be nearby and let the LC have, because they gave them motorbikes, I remember. So they can drive those survivors to the police station. Yeah. So it will start from family, where we talk to our children, then it will go to the leaders, and then it will go to government, because government indeed can't do everything. And then also as civil society and women rights organizations working together, because that is one of the main reasons and also a way that we've tried to make sure that that happens. And then other ways works to do with the toll-free lines. Many people, I also commend Uganda Police Force. They also got a toll-free line in regards for GBV. Yes, for GBV. Okay. Even other organizations, FIDA got, we have a toll-free line also in regards to GBV and other cases to do with women and children, Women's Pro Bono Initiative, the Remnant Generation, and other organizations. So really, there's a lot that has been done, but then there's more that needs to be done.
A lot that needs to be done.
COVID-19 has tested our hope and faith as individuals, families, and the country at large. Besides destroying many aspects of our lives, the novel coronavirus has also affected our human rights in many ways. You and the Law, the COVID edition, is a 30-minute weekly television program that focuses on the impact of COVID-19 on human rights in Uganda. The program engages experts to explain the importance of rights-based approaches to the success of any public health response to ensure the respect, protection, and fulfillment of human rights amidst the challenges presented by COVID-19. You and the Law, the television program, brought to you by Legal Hub Uganda, taking the law to the last mile in proud association with I4C Africa Hub and House of Talent Television.
Angela, so having stated the obligations, what would be your assessment of Uganda as a country? How are we doing in as far as the prevention of gender-based violence is concerned? What would be your quick appraisal? How are we doing as a country?
As a country, I'll first appreciate the successes. I'll commend government to some extent that there have been enactment of laws like the Domestic Violence Act. We have the other laws and even the Constitution itself. However, there's still a lot that has to be done.
Yes.
For instance, as a government, we have a silent pandemic that most people that are in government have failed to understand. This silent pandemic is gender-based violence, where people are focusing on how many people are dying of COVID, and no one is focusing on how many people are becoming victims and survivors of gender-based violence. So it really, really affects. And then the other thing is in regards to the implementation. We have very, very good laws in Uganda, but then one of the main issues that we face is in regards to the implementation of those laws. So there's lacking in regards to the implementation. And then there's also lacking in regards to sensitization. People don't know these laws. You'll find someone harassing a person online and they'll think it's funny. Someone look at you and they're like, oh, and then they'll give you a sexual comment and they think it is funny, it is okay to look at a woman or a man and you make a sexual comment.
Even men, huh?
Yes, so that's why I said a man or a woman. So this affects either sides. It affects a woman, it affects a man, and it affects also children.
Hello viewers, welcome to yet another episode of You and the Law, the COVID edition here on House of Talent Television. My name is Jonathan Ochom, your host. Today we're discussing yet another right or another aspect of our rights that has been affected significantly by COVID-19. As you know, in the previous episodes we've been tackling different issues. We talked about employment law, we talked about land rights, we've talked about access to justice, we've talked about human rights broadly as a theme and how COVID-19 has affected it. But today, we'll look at gender-based violence. What is the intersection between COVID-19 and gender-based violence? And with me in studio is Angella Asiimwe, who is the human rights lawyer and working for FIDA Uganda. Angella, you're welcome to You and the Law.
Thank you so much, Jonathan.
How have you been?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Great. So COVID-19 came here. How have you been coping up, knowing that almost for the last 1.5 years or 2 years, the game has been a bit different. How has it been on your end?
On my end, it has been a bit complicated, but with time I managed to cope up because I'm so much into online work.
Wow.
So most of the work I had that was physical, I transferred it to online because I work mainly with people that are vulnerable and marginalized, women and children. Yes.
So you managed to keep afloat?
Yes.
Okay, so I know you do so many things, but I also know that you do some work for FIDA Uganda, and I thought perhaps you could give us 1 or 2, 3 lines about FIDA Uganda for people who could be hearing about FIDA for the first time. In the unlikely event that those people are there.
Okay, so FIDA Uganda is a women's rights organization and a feminist organization that is a membership organization for women lawyers aimed at ensuring that people, especially women and children, get access to justice in all spheres of life. Yes, so that's what we do mainly.
Oh, so I can't apply to be a member?
No, men can also be members of FIDA, but they are friends. So women lawyers are members of FIDA.
Yes.
If you pay the subscription.
Yes.
But then for the men, you can be friend of FIDA.
So I befriend Angela and I become a
really.
friend of FIDA.
You befriend FIDA and the work FIDA does. So you as Jonathan, a human rights lawyer that advocates for the rights of women, girls and other marginalized groups, you can come to FIDA and request to be one of our friends.
Okay.
So you become a friend of FIDA.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have men that are friends.
Perhaps I'll be filling a few forms after this show.
Okay.
So today we're here to talk about gender-based violence and seeing how how COVID-19 has affected that area, either heightened or reduced it. But I thought that we could start by understanding first the concept. When we talk about gender-based violence, what do we exactly mean? How would you explain to an ordinary person this whole idea of gender-based violence?
Okay, thank you so much, Jonathan. So gender-based violence, what we have to know is it evolved from violence against women, and that was under the UN Declaration on Violence Against Women, where they defined, or to make it easier for the ordinary Ugandan, like you said, it's any act of violence that can be physical, emotional, economical, or anything that is harmful to a person. So it's basically violence that has different forms.
My quick understanding of violence would entail sort of physical contact. So how are people violated economically and, I don't know, emotionally?
Okay, so what we have to understand is violence is not only physical. There are several forms of violence. For physical, that's where you'll find the battering, that's where you'll find beating someone, getting physical with someone. But then for economical, that's where you'll find issues to do with refusing someone to take their assets, in issues to do with land, where you deny someone because they are a woman, so you deny them the land,
Okay.
and say that a woman can't inherit land. And then there's also something to do with the mental or psychological, where you can make sure that a person is psychologically tortured, so that is also violence. And then we also have the other violence, which is to do with emotional, but emotional is related to psychological. And then there's the harmful practices. So harmful practices, that's where you find female genital mutilation and other harmful practices we have. Then the main one that has been on the rise during the COVID-19 pandemic is sexual violence, which has many components to do with defilement, rape, incest, marital rape, even online. These days it's worsened online. Yes, so those are the forms of gender-based violence that we have.
Okay.
Yes.
Angela, you explained this idea in an eloquent manner, and I'm curious to know, so where are these ideas embedded? Because if we talk about fighting gender-based violence, we should have some framework in place to facilitate our work. So if you look at global, regional, or national frameworks, what is there? What do they provide for in that regard?
Thank you so much. So in regards to the frameworks we have, I'll start with our constitution. The Constitution of the Republic of Uganda under Objective 14. It's very clear that the state is obligated to protect rights of people. And then we have Article 33, which is rights of women. Because gender-based violence mostly, especially in Uganda, affects more of women than men. However, we're not saying that men are not affected. So Article 33(3) is clear that it's in regards to protecting rights of women. However, in the Objective 14 of the Constitution, it's protection of all rights of people. So that's where you find gender-based violence issues that are aligned. And then we have other laws like the Domestic Violence Act. I'm privileged to be one of those people that belongs to the Domestic Violence Coalition. The people that ensured that we worked on the Domestic Violence Act in Uganda, and it was passed. And FIDA is also a member, and other organizations that are women rights organizations. We also have the Penal Code. However, the Penal Code is a law that has been in existence for ages. So there are many loopholes. We also have the one of prohibition of female genital mutilation, which is in regards to the harmful practices that I told you about. Then we have the Sexual Offences Bill. Now those are all national. Sexual Offences Bill that was enacted in 2010, but up to today, it's still lagging because people feel it is okay to have issues to do with marital rape, not to consent. So we believe that as women, as men, as children, there's need to pass the Sexual Offences Bill so that it protects all people, because it's a law that consolidates all laws in regards to sexual offences. Then in regards to the regional level, we have what we call the Maputo Protocol. That one is a bit related to the Sexual Offences Bill. It also covers those issues to do with marital rape, to do with abortion, to do with issues to do with LGBTIQ, because in the Sexual Offences Bill, one of the reasons that's why we didn't want it to get passed is because it criminalized. Yes, even sex work. It criminalized sex work. Yet everyone has a right to decide what they can do as a human being. Yes, so I see it has become funny. Then we have the UN Declaration against violence against women. So there are several laws. And we also have the CEDAW, which is mainly in regards to violence against women.
What is the CEDAW in full?
So CEDAW in full, we have it's mainly a UN AU charter that is against violence against women. But then they make it in form, even Maputo, because it was made in the town of Maputo, yes. Then we have the Beijing Declaration, Platform for Action. So some people also call it Beijing. So those are some of the laws that are both at national, regional, and the international level. Yes.
Okay, so with that sort of good background in the law, then I'm curious to know then who's responsible for doing what? Whose duty is it to protect, to prevent gender-based violence? Who does the law vest with particular specific mandates in this regard?
So if we go to duty, one of the things that people need to understand is there's a right and a duty, but then it's everyone's duty to make sure that we combat gender-based violence. But then the state, under Objective 14, it's clear that it has to protect rights of the people. And then apart from the state, we the people, as Angella, as a human rights activist, as a lawyer, I also have a right and duty to protect and also ensure that I fight for the rights of the survivors. And then the community leaders, because we have some community leaders that are gatekeepers of patriarchy. And yes, so what I mean mainly, patriarchy is like domination by men, where someone feels that a woman is more inferior to a man, and that's why you'll find people thinking that women are property. So a woman is abused just because a man paid dowry, and then they don't know that dowry is something where the case law is now clear that it's not buying a woman, it's just a gift. So you don't have to beat a woman just because you took something. And then there are also religious institutions. They also have a big role to play. So every time they keep telling women, you have to submit. If a woman beats you, a man beats you, it is okay. So we also have to engage them so that they play their role. And these days they are trying to do a good job, because I've listened to radio stations, TV stations, and it's clear. They tell people that gender-based violence is a vice that needs to be stopped. So all those institutions and individuals have a big role to play. So it starts with you and me, and then it goes to government, and then it goes to the leaders in the community, then it goes to our MPs, it goes to also the international level. And that's why we gave you both national, regional, and international, because it's everyone's duty and role to protect women and men against gender-based violence.
Angella, so having stated the obligations, what would be your assessment of Uganda as a country? How are we doing in as far as the prevention of gender-based violence is concerned? What would be your quick appraisal? How are we doing as a country?
As a country, I'll first appreciate the successes. I'll commend government to some extent that there have been enactment of laws like the Domestic Violence Act. We have the other laws and even the Constitution itself. However, there's still a lot that has to be done. For instance, as a government, we have a silent pandemic that most people that are in government have failed to understand. This silent pandemic is gender-based violence, where people are focusing on how many people are dying of COVID, and no one is focusing on how many people are becoming victims and survivors of gender-based violence. So it really, really affects. And then the other thing is in regards to the implementation. We have very, very good laws in Uganda, but then one of the main issues that we face is in regards to the implementation of those laws. So there's lacking in regards to the implementation. And then there's also lacking in regards to sensitization. People don't know these laws. You'll find someone harassing a person online and they'll think it's funny. Someone look at you and they're like, oh, and then they'll give you a sexual comment and they think it is funny, it is okay to look at a woman or a man and you make a sexual comment.
Even men, huh?
Yes, so that's why I said a man or a woman. So this affects either sides. It affects a woman, it affects a man, and it affects also children. Yes.
So it's basically, you're basically saying we are there but not there.
We are there but not there. And then the other thing that has also failed totally is in regards to the shelters. The numbers are increasing. The 2016 demographic survey was clear. 25% of girls get pregnant below the age of 18 years. And since the onset of COVID-19, the numbers have doubled. And in the last report we had, there were over 60 girls that get pregnant below the age of 18. And that is also related to gender-based violence under the form of sexual violence. So you realize that if we have such a number, and then we have a president that will go on television and tell people that if these girls have not died, it is not an issue. That is really, really crap. We can't say that this is an issue. So, because this is a silent pandemic. Every now and then they are releasing numbers of girls that are getting pregnant. And yet we have a government that has done nothing about it. We have no shelter. We have no laws that are implemented that are very clear. Yes. So,
Angella, that's a sort of a sad revelation, really, your closing remarks at that point. But I guess it's time for us to go for a break and cool off a little bit. Then after that, we'll pick on from there. Viewers, you're watching You and the Law, the COVID edition here on House of Talent Television. Let's go for a quick break. We'll be right back.
when it comes to the law, we basically live the law, you know, on a day-to-day basis, you know. Whether it is in your bedroom, there is a law that governs it. If you're married, for example, even if you're single, there could be something touching on the law, because you might be in your bedroom with an underage girl, or you might be with another person's wife, you know. All the things are the law, you know.
If you're a human being, you have rights. Those rights are called human rights. They are examples: the right to health, the right to freedom from torture, that underscores human dignity, freedom from slavery. You're not supposed to be someone's slave.
If you look at our penal code, it sets out another marriage laws. It sets out the persons who can marry and those who cannot marry, right? For example, you can't marry your close relatives. You know, if you did, you'd be committing a crime.
The state is not supposed to tell you who to worship, how to worship, how many times a day. No, you have a right to work. A right to work. You have freedom of association.
Cohabitation for whatever period of time does not make you husband and wife, right? And that is why we emphasize to people that when the relationship is still hot, you know, you must ensure that you do what? Marry.
Yes.
You know?
For human rights to be respected, protected, and fulfilled, relevant government programs must actually work. Medicine should reach hospitals. Oxygen should be there. Health workers should have gloves. Teachers should be present. Now they are mostly absent, and they have left the profession, a good number of them. They are into trading. So things must work. If things don't work, human rights are not respected, are not protected, and are not fulfilled.
COVID-19 has tested our hope and faith as individuals, families, and the country at large. Besides destroying many aspects of our lives, the novel coronavirus has also affected our human rights in many ways. You and the Law, the COVID edition, is a 30-minute weekly television program that focuses on the impact of COVID-19 on human rights in Uganda. The program engages experts to explain the importance of rights-based approaches to the success of any public health response to ensure the respect, protection, and fulfillment of human rights amidst the challenges presented by COVID-19. You and the Law, the television program, brought to you by Legal Hub Uganda, taking the law to the last mile in proud association with I4C Africa Hub and House of Talent Television, coming soon.
Welcome back. This is You and the Law, the COVID edition here on House of Talent Television. I'm Jonathan Ochom, your host, and today we're sitting with Angella Asiimwe from FIDA Uganda to discuss gender-based violence and how COVID-19 has affected or impacted on the whole gender-based violence situation in the country. So, Angella, welcome back.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Before the break, you were unpacking the responsibilities and obligations of the different people. You talked about the state, talked about the religious leaders, individuals, and stuff like that. So I want us to switch gears now and then tackle COVID-19. So we have a global pandemic comes to Uganda, and the government, as expected, had to swing in action and put in place a number of stringent measures in order to curb the spread of the virus. And but along the way, we realized number of issues arising along the way. But I'm curious to know from your end, what is your assessment of how COVID-19, the interplay between COVID-19 and gender-based violence?
Thank you, Jonathan. So one of the first things I want to let people know, we've had many people blame COVID to have brought gender-based violence, but COVID is not the problem. It has, COVID is not the problem. It has been there before. Gender-based violence was there before COVID-19. So one of the things we have to understand is when COVID-19 came, the stringent measures that you talked about, the restrictions, the lockdowns, are the ones that accelerated the numbers and increased them. So when people were locked down, especially the first lockdown where people are not allowed to move, and we realized that people like you, the lawyers, were not allowed to work. You are considered non-essential, by the way.
Yeah,
so,
but the borders were more needed at that point, yeah.
So mainly what you have to understand, those restrictions increased the rate. And then that was because many people were stuck with their abusers. Most of the times, yes.
Okay.
So,
I thought people were stuck with their spouses, their loving spouses.
There are people
their
that
children.
were stuck with their loving children, loving spouses, but then there are also those people that were stuck with abusers. Most of the times there are people that will go out there and they look for a sexual partner, but then now you're stuck in a home and you're with people that don't even connect with you. So the next thing you're thinking about is, okay, what do I do now? And one of the things we have to understand is people that are perpetrators of sexual violence don't start during the pandemic, but they have been doing this. Maybe they were doing it with other people, but now that they are stuck in homes with these young children, with the women, with the men, then those become the victims. Because then you can't go out there. Maybe they were having the sexual violence in offices. Now they are home. So who else can you have? It's the people that are at home. I'm one of the people that work with mainly teenage girls. And those are pregnant teenage girls, because I'm also a survivor of sexual harassment that gave birth at the age of 15. But then we got over 80% of cases that were incest cases. You've realized that these are fathers that are defining the girls. These are uncles, these are aunties, these are, you get? So at the end of the day, there are people that have the power and influence. Before COVID, people that had the power and influence were mainly teachers, border riders that take your children home. So those that are the people that had the power then. But now you're home. So people were very much stuck with those abusers. And that's why the rates increased. And then the other issue was to do with getting services. Previously, especially to do with physical violence, even sexual violence. Physical violence will start with the police. Very many people, especially those that live in far-to-reach areas, there was a time where even borders were restricted to move, and you needed like a letter from the RDC.
Yes.
So when they beat you and you realize that the police station is like 5 hours away, you wonder, how do you get there? You decide to die in silence. You're like, okay, let me not put out the dirty laundry, because what if I don't even reach there? And then the other thing was to do with, apart from the police, to do with the courts. People that are supposed to ensure that these survivors get access to justice, like you and me, we're not out there to provide it, because we were considered non-essential in the first lockdown. So courts were not operating on such matters, because according to the president, he realized and thought that it is okay to tell Ugandans that gender-based violence is not an issue that needs to be concerned and also needs to be addressed, where people can access justice. He said, unless it is to do with like murder, to do with robbery, the things to do with gender-based violence, to him were not.
You can understand where he's coming from.
You can't understand if you're someone like me who works with gender-based violence shelters. I've worked with several gender-based violence shelters, not only the remnant generation, even wanted shelters. Last week we are reopening the shelters of Kamuli and Namutumba. Those are under Uganda Women's Network. And that is in relation to the shrinking civic space. We have a shelter that is closed just because the government is threatened and thinks that women rights organizations are terrorists, which is stupidity, because how do you call a women rights organization a terrorist? So they close the shelters, the numbers are increasing, and these people have nowhere to go. Action Aid also has. But then during the COVID pandemic, we've had a flood where you don't even have where to put survivors, and some of them ended up living in our homes. So it's an issue that was supposed to be tackled. So when it wasn't tackled, it kept accelerating. And then they keep blaming COVID, but it's not COVID, it's the system in place. If the system was in order and people can access justice, people can go to police, people can ensure that there's a shelter. Government has consistently failed to set up a shelter for gender-based violence survivors. And yet it limits the organizations that have put these shelters up. Because we have like 5 women rights organizations that have set up shelters for gender-based violence. But then you realize that even the restrictions that are there to start and also to operate they are very, very stringent and draconian. So it becomes so hard for these people to provide the service to these, to the survivors. Yes.
So, Angela, you paint a very sad picture. We could be factual, but I'm sort of anxious to know, aren't there things that we can say in this area? The government did well. At least it intervened this way, but tried. This intervention also was considerate of, GBV, and perhaps it tried to cap down the prevalence of GBV. Aren't there, from the COVID response, aren't there things that we can, quote unquote, celebrate as a country from the government's intervention?
The first thing I said, I commended, because the first thing is in regards to the laws. We have the laws, but then we failed on implementation. So it's a success and not a success.
No, I mean in the context of
COVID response.
Yes.
Still, when after the first lockdown, when they opened up and the hospitals are operating, that's a plus. It's a success. And then, but then you realize that even when the hospitals are open, transport fees, too much. Not everyone can afford the transport of taxis now.
Yeah.
Even border.
Yeah.
They have doubled the price, because the taxi that was taking 14 people is now taking like 7.
Yeah.
So if you are living in Tinda and you're going to Masaka, the transport you'll use, let's say it was 20,000, now it is at 40. How many people can afford 40,000? So yes, there are measures that have been done, and we commend and we thank the government that it opened up. And then also we are grateful that also I've realized that there are also areas where the Ministry of Gender, we commend them, especially Angella. Angella, who is also the PS of Ministry of Gender, was part of the opening of the shelters of Uganda Women's Network. Even AIGP Hassan Kasinje. That shows that they have also played their role, not only as government people, but also as individuals, to ensure that this is worked on. So them being present and also encouraging people to come up and go to the shelter for their services means that government has tried and it has done something. But then we're not saying that it should stop. It should do better. We expect more from this government. Yes, we don't only expect peanuts. We expect something big. But then we also have a role to play. That's why we've said as FIDA, we make sure that these women, children get access to justice. And then we don't only work alone, we work with the Domestic Violence Act Coalition, where you'll find the Uganda Women's Network, you'll find the Action Aids, who have shelters. And they're also playing their role. But then when they're playing their role and you shrink their space, then that becomes a problem. Yes.
So, Angela, you've highlighted the challenges that government has gotten itself in. But I'm then curious to know, what role do you think that ordinary people at the family level, because it's important also to highlight, the community aspect. We can't push everything to government, whatever the justifications. What do you think the people could have done or should do, because we're still living under COVID measures anyway, to prevent GBV, especially in extraordinary times like now, at the community, family, individual level?
So first and foremost is mainly sensitization. As community leaders, the time they were getting those microphones or whatever they are called, to tell people that mask up, they would also have used that chance to tell people and inform them about this silent pandemic, which is gender-based violence. And then also open their doors and inform people that in case anything happens, we are open. You can come and report. Because the other thing that really affects people is in regards to the norms, where someone can't speak up, saying that you survive of gender-based violence is seen like a taboo. How do you say that? You're putting the dirty laundry out there. But then if we sat down as the community leaders, and they did that, but then we start from family. So as I'm a mother of a 14-year-old son. I always sit him down and we have the conversations in regard to sex education. I tell him, if they touch you like this, if they do this to you, if they make these comments, this is what happens. Please report. So encourage people starting from home to speak up. To speak up when they get issues to do with gender-based violence. But also make sure that other forums, because if you can't access the police because it's far, then let the LC be nearby and let the LC have, because they gave them motorbikes, I remember. So they can drive those survivors to the police station. Yeah. So it will start from family, where we talk to our children, then it will go to the leaders, and then it will go to government, because government indeed can't do everything. And then also as civil society and women rights organizations working together, because that is one of the main reasons, and also a way that we've tried to make sure that that happens. And then other ways works to do with the toll-free lines. Many people, I also commend Uganda Police Force. They also got a toll-free line in regards
for GBV?
Yes, for GBV.
Okay.
Even other organizations, FIDA got, we have a toll-free line also in regards to GBV and other cases to do with women and children, Women's Pro Bono Initiative, the Remnant Generation, and other organizations. So really, there's a lot that has been done, but then there's more that needs to be done.
A lot that needs to be done. Then in terms of the legal framework, which is one of the core obligations of the state, you've highlighted that there are a number of still challenges with the law. Are there specific laws that you are pushing for their reform to protect GBV?
Yes. So the main law that we're pushing for is the Sexual Offences Bill. Sexual Offences Bill is the law that consolidates all laws concerning sexual offences. And it will work on in regards to the punishing the offender and then ensuring that the survivor is catered for, not only in court, but also mentally. So when this law is passed, then it becomes very, very easy. And then the laws we had previously, as I told you, like the penal code, these are laws that were made during the colonial times. They don't address issues to do with online sexual violence.
Contemporary.
It doesn't, yes. By then we had norms where a woman was property. They don't address issues of marital rape. They don't address issues of consent. So if this law that addresses all those things is passed, then we'll see something that happens. And then the other thing is in regards to the institutions. We realized that some institutions of higher learning were closed, but then others were operating. I'm happy to inform you that under FIDA Uganda, we worked with Makerere University, which is like the first university in Uganda or the public university, and we made sure that we had the policy which they had against sexual harassment was reviewed, because it was a policy that was enacted 12 years ago. And I'm privileged to inform you that as under FIDA as sent to be one of the committee members that participates in reviewing it with Professor Livia Tamales and Gender Mainstreaming Directory. So right now, when we finished reviewing it, it was passed, so it will also help in regards to institutions of higher learning.
Okay, Angela, that's an important point. Perhaps we'll go for a break for now, and then we'll return and then try to project the future and see how we can prepare ourselves. Viewers, you're watching You and the Law, the COVID edition here on House of Talent Television. Today we're discussing gender-based violence and its connection with COVID-19. Let's go for a short break. We'll be right back. This is You and the Law, the COVID edition here on House of Talent Television. I'm your host, Jonathan Ochom, and today we are sitting with Angella Asiimwe from FIDA Uganda to discuss the connection between COVID-19 and gender-based violence in the country. Angella, welcome back from the break.
Thank you.
So this is our final segment where we look at the future, because we recognize the fact that, yes, we're in pandemic times right now. It could come to an end at a certain point. It could stay for 5 or 10 years or whatever it is. Hopefully it doesn't. But then also we could find ourselves in with another problem of a similar magnitude. And as a country, it's important to sort of pick lessons from COVID-19. So I thought we could start by discussing from the angle of preventing gender-based violence. What lessons do we learn from the current COVID pandemic and our response to it? What have we learned that can inform our actions for the future? Then perhaps later we shall then talk about specific recommendations, but I thought we could start by lessons first.
One of the lessons we've learned is in regards to family. family being the main unit. You know, previously people were more into sending children to schools, and as parents we were so redundant and we didn't play our role. So one of the lessons we learned is, let's have our children get the conversations in regards to sex education, so they're able to break the silence and report. Then in regards to government, one of the challenges was to do with allocating funds in regards to gender-based violence. Going forward, we learn a lesson that there's need to ensure that when they're allocating funds, they need to also consider other emerging issues, not just the pandemic. So you don't focus only on the pandemic and leave other challenges that are facing in the country, because also other things came up like land, but also mainly the main thing that rose was gender-based violence. So we don't only have to focus on the pandemic, but the country has to continue running. And then the other lesson we learn is that everyone is essential. What are the things we learned in Uganda? That without one structure, the other can't survive.
True.
Yes, so that's one of the other lessons, that we should know that everyone is essential in their own way, and everyone contributes to the other person's work. So we need everyone. And lastly, the other lesson we need to get is working together, collaborations. I like the collaboration, like I told you, our government now is coming on board to work with women rights organizations in combating gender-based violence. So we should continue with that, working together in ensuring that we end gender-based violence. But then ensuring also, the other lesson we learn is that there's need to have platforms that are safe spaces. And safe spaces to do with shelters, to do with going to police, good thing they have now a department to do with the women and the children. So having those spaces, not just there, but then training these people and ensuring that when people grant to them, they can provide the support that they need. Yeah, so those are some of the lessons we learned.
Okay, now we then need to think about where we headed. Scenario, let's think that Angella is the next, Minister of Justice, Minister of Gender, Labor and Social Development, sort of in a docket, in a position of responsibility that, has a higher say or a higher mandate on prevention of gender-based violence in the country. What would be those recommendations that you would push for to ensure that if we find ourselves in a similar situation, the country is prepared? Because I think when this started, people used to think it's a problem of China. It's a problem of the rich world. It can't reach here in Africa. And remember at the start, they were saying that it doesn't even catch Africans, Black people are okay. And then until the thing came through Entebbe airport and spread across the country. So what would be those things that you'd say, government, ABCD, prepare now so that if we find ourselves in this, we'll be able to maneuver through and ensure that GBV is prevented in Uganda?
In regards to government, one of the main things would be in regards to passing the sexual offences bill, because it addresses at least 90%. I wouldn't say like everything, but at least 90%. However, they have to remove the clauses that are criminalizing other people's rights.
Yes.
And then the other thing is in regards to ensuring that perpetrators are held accountable. We've seen as one of the people that spearheaded Justice for Samantha campaign, and it was in regards to ending sexual harassment in the workplace. But then we see the alleged perpetrators not tried under courts of law, but then promoted from a Deputy Solicitor General to Court of Appeal. So we need to have stringent measures of ensuring that the perpetrators or the alleged perpetrators are brought to book, where the survivors can feel safe that, okay, if court said that this person is innocent, then that's okay. But then if you don't try this person in a clear court, which is a court of judicature, then it doesn't also help the survivor, because the survivor will also suffer again. And then the other issue is in regards to ensuring that the laws we have are implemented. Because like you said, if as Minister of Justice, I would ensure the first thing was to ensure that there are measures that are clear and these laws are implemented. Because having good laws like the Constitution and all these other laws, and these laws are not even implemented, doesn't help anyone. Yes. And also maybe encouraging people out there to break the silence.
Yes.
To break the silence and know that this vice, if you don't break the silence, then you can't help other people that come out there and they're also survivors. But when you break the silence, like Angela comes in and tells you that she's a survivor of sexual harassment, then it is easier for the other person to also speak up. So encourage more people to speak up. Then we also need to ensure that even the institutions that help in combating gender-based violence, like the police, courts, local councils, we need to have more trainings. I commend women rights organizations, especially FIDA, the Remnant Generation, Uganda Women's Network, who have done a great job at training police officers, at training cultural leaders, religious leaders in regards to combating sexual and gender-based violence. But there's more that needs to be done, especially at government level, where now the women rights organizations have done this. So they should also complement and do something in regards to that. So those are some of the things that need to be done in regards to combating gender-based violence.
You highlighted training as an area of investment, but I'm sort of curious to know what other areas do you think need government deliberate attention on? Because I know if you talk about training, you're talking about resources. What are the other areas that actually resources should be dedicated to? So that we're able to deal with pandemics or any other situation like COVID-19 and prevent GBV.
The other areas in regards to resources is to do with our budgeting, especially the national budget. Realize that most of the times, even now when COVID came, since the onset of COVID, all the money is directed to COVID. So they need to allocate some money in regards to Ministry of Gender and towards fighting or combating gender-based violence. Because if most of the people who are engaging in Ministry of Gender, they were like, okay, we also want to support, but then we don't have a budget for this. And there's nothing much you can do about it. So as women rights organizations, if you're to work with them, you'll end up even funding them. You'll pay for most of their services to make sure that something works out. So there's also need to also ensure that they direct some funds in that docket. Yes.
As we come to the end, Angela, I want to sort of get your parting shot, but in the form of want to make a case why we should invest in prevention of gender-based violence. What benefit shall we reap as a country when GBV is prevented as we come to the end of the show?
When GBV is prevented in Uganda and in the world, women and girls can achieve their full potential. As Angella Asiimwe, a survivor of sexual harassment that gave birth at the age of 15, I was able to achieve that because I broke the silence. So if we invest in this, then more girls can be like Angela, and even better, then more girls and women, plus even men and boys who are survivors of sexual harassment, they can be able to achieve their full potential. They can be able to achieve gender equality, and then they can contribute to the development of the country as Uganda, but also Africa and beyond.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Angela, for taking your time to be with us here on House of Talent Television, discussing COVID-19 and the relationship with the gender-based violence. You've made very strong points for the need for the government to invest in areas that matter: training, skilling of actors on prevention of gender-based violence. You've also emphasized the role of the community in preventing GBV and the fact that all of us have a role in this country, not just only government, religious leaders, cultural leaders, as a family and individuals who have a critical role to play in preventing gender-based violence, especially in critical times like now that we find ourselves in because of the global pandemic. With that, we've come to the end of today's edition of You and the Law. I've been your host, Jonathan Ochom. Next time, we'll have a discussion on yet another right which has been affected by COVID-19. Until then, bye.
working.
Yeah.
But first of all, if you're passionate about what you're going to do, I believe in all work we do mistakes. So my first experience at work was when I reach at work, you know you have to be confident when you're doing something, even if it's wrong.
I think most female feel like being a barista is more of a male job, or being a farmer is a male thing, or being a quality controller. Yet they don't know that there are other perfect people that we are looking at.
So hygiene, because impression is key.
Yeah.
Remember, you're serving coffee. Coffee is so simple. If you, I don't know if you have some coffee cups here. I will show this. You can find a very small cup, and you have to do a pour over there.
Yeah.
So if you're dirty, you have to, you have to be so hygienic.